This is the psychology of someone who learned too early that being useful was safer than being real, and paid for that safety with their childhood. What saved you then is hurting you now. You didn't become mature early because you were gifted. You became mature early because you had to. Somewhere in your childhood, time accelerated. While other kids were learning how to play, you were learning how to cope. While they were allowed to be messy, emotional, impulsive, you were learning how to read the room, how to sense tension before it exploded, how to shrink your needs so no one else would have to carry them. And people praised you for it. They called you wise beyond your years, an old soul, so responsible. What they didn't see was the cost. Because the paradox of growing up too fast is this: the very skills that protected you as a child quietly imprison you as an adult. You learned to stay calm in chaos, and now you struggle to feel joy in peace. You learned to suppress your needs, and now you don't know what you want. You learned to be strong, and now softness feels unsafe. This video is not about blaming your past. It's about naming a grief you were never allowed to feel. The grief of a childhood that ended before it began. The grief of becoming functional instead of free. The grief of being needed but not nurtured. And if you're listening closely, you may realize you've been carrying a weight that was never yours to hold. The child who became the container. Psychologically, a child who grows up too fast often lives at the intersection of parentification, emotional neglect, and chronic hypervigilance. Let's slow this down. Parentification. Parentification occurs when a child is unconsciously assigned adult emotional or practical responsibilities. You may have been the emotional support for a parent, the peacekeeper between siblings, the easy one who didn't cause trouble. You learned early, my role is to hold things together. But developmentally, this creates a fracture, because a child's nervous system is not designed to be a container, it is designed to be held. Emotional neglect. This doesn't require cruelty or abuse. Sometimes it looks like silence, absence, preoccupation, survival mode parenting. Your feelings weren't mirrored back to you, not because they didn't matter, but because no one had the capacity to receive them. So your psyche adapted. You internalized a rule. My emotions are inconvenient. My needs are excessive. And slowly, unconsciously, you stopped asking. Hypervigilance and the nervous system. Your nervous system learned to stay alert, always scanning for shifts in mood, danger, instability. This keeps the amygdala overactivated and prevents the nervous system from settling into safety. Even now, rest may feel unfamiliar. Peace may feel empty. Stillness may feel wrong. Your brain's default mode network, the system responsible for self-reflection and identity, was shaped around vigilance instead of curiosity. You didn't ask, "Who am I?" You asked, "Who do I need to be to survive?" And that question followed you into adulthood. The invisible grief no one sees. There is a specific kind of grief that follows those who grew up too fast. Not the grief of something lost suddenly, but the grief of something never fully lived. You mourn a childhood that didn't get to be messy, didn't get to be protected, didn't get to be held without conditions. Carl Jung wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents." But there's another burden, quieter and heavier, the unlived life of the child themselves. You learned to suppress spontaneity for stability, curiosity for caution, play for preparedness. And even now, as an adult, you carry an invisible rule book. Don't need too much. Don't take up space. Don't fall apart. Seneca warned that we suffer more often in imagination than reality. But for you, imagination was once a survival tool. You had to foresee problems before they arrived. So you live in a constant state of almost relief, never fully safe, never fully present. Rilke wrote, "The purpose of life is to be defeated by greater and greater things. But you were defeated too early, by responsibility, by silence, by the demand to be strong before you were ready." The deepest wound isn't exhaustion. It's the fear that if you stop performing competence, love will disappear. How the child still runs the show. Children who grow up too fast don't stop being that child. They become adults who look functional but feel perpetually behind themselves. You might recognize these patterns. 1. In relationships. You overgive, overfunction, and under-receive. You're drawn to people who need you, but struggle with those who want to care for you. 2. In boundaries. Saying no feels like abandonment. You confuse loyalty with self-erasure. 3. In career. You become indispensable and exhausted. You take pride in being reliable while quietly resenting the weight. 4. In emotional regulation. You intellectualize feelings instead of feeling them. You stay composed while your body carries the stress. 5. In self-worth. Your value feels conditional. Rest feels unearned unless you've proven usefulness. 6. In identity. You don't know who you are without responsibility. Stillness creates anxiety because it offers no role to play. These aren't flaws. They're coping mechanisms that outlived their usefulness. Awareness doesn't mean self-blame. It means recognizing that the child inside you learned the only way they could. But adulthood invites a new question. What would it mean to choose softness over survival? From survival to wholeness. Healing for those who grew up too fast isn't about becoming stronger. It's about becoming gentler. It begins with inner child work, not reliving the past, but finally acknowledging what was never named. It includes shadow work, meeting the parts of you that feel selfish, needy, or too much, and realizing they're simply undernourished. It requires nervous system regulation, learning safety through breath, rest, slowness, and presence. And most importantly, it asks you to practice something radical: receiving without earning. Letting yourself be imperfect, letting yourself be held, letting yourself be human. Because the child who grew up too fast didn't need more responsibility. They needed protection. And the adult you are now has the power to offer it. As poet David Whyte said, "You must learn one thing: the world was made to be free in." The goal is not to be fixed, but to become whole. If this spoke to you, you're not alone, and you don't have to carry it in silence anymore. Why calm feels unfamiliar. For a child who grew up too fast, the body learned one rule early: safety is something you create, not something you're given. Your nervous system adapted accordingly. Fight didn't look like rage. Flight didn't look like escape. Freeze didn't look like numbness. Instead, you developed functional hyperarousal, a state where you appear calm, capable, even grounded, while your body stays subtly braced. Your shoulders never fully drop. Your jaw stays tight. Your mind stays one step ahead. This is why just relax has never worked for you. Stillness removes your role. Silence removes your task. Rest removes your function. And without function, the old fear whispers, "If I'm not useful, am I safe?" Polyvagal theory helps explain this. Your system learned to live in a sympathetic dorsal blend, alert enough to manage others, numb enough to survive your own unmet needs. Healing doesn't mean forcing calm. It means teaching your body that nothing bad happens when you stop performing, that safety can exist without vigilance, that rest is not a threat. Who are you without the weight? One of the most disorienting stages of healing comes when responsibility loosens, because underneath competence there is often a quiet emptiness. not because you lack depth, but because your identity was built around function, not desire. You were praised for being dependable, mature, helpful, strong. Rarely were you asked, what do you like? What feels good? What do you want? So when life finally offers you space, you don't feel free, you feel lost. This is the identity vacuum that follows parentification, the moment when survival ends but selfhood hasn't yet begun. It can feel like grief or boredom or anxiety masquerading as restlessness. This is not regression. This is emergence. You are meeting the self that never had time to form. And yes, this stage can feel terrifying because choosing for yourself feels selfish when you were trained to choose for everyone else. But this is where life actually starts. Like, share, and subscribe, not because you owe anything, but because healing, like childhood, was never meant to be done alone.